why do you have unhealthy cravings, right? That's the question. And I think the more you understand it, the easier it is to fix that problem. You see, I think a lot of times in our society, I think the medical establishment is much more about dealing with symptoms than finding cures. And I think that bleeds over into our thinking about weight loss and specifically cravings. And so once you understand why these cravings exist, what's causing them in a more contextual way, then you can start resolving it and finding a genuine cure for it, because you do not have to experience unhealthy cravings all the time forever. Okay. You can manage them. You can make them, I don't want to say make them completely go away, because I don't know if that's possible, but you can absolutely minimize them and make them way less than what you're currently experiencing. But I think it helps to understand what they are in the first place. So, one thing I want to talk about, it's some of what I'm going to be talking about is from directly this book here, which is a great book. Strongly recommend it. And so the idea is this book's all about biological evolution and cultural evolution, right? And so what happens is we're all living in bodies that have evolved over millions of years in a food scarce, natural environment. And so in order to understand yourself, in order to understand the obesity epidemic, you really need to understand evolution and where we came from. How did we get here? Right? We'll just all of a sudden have these bodies. These bodies were created in a completely different environment, literally almost like an alien environment to where we're at now. Although it's flipped around, we're living in an alien environment now, and we did evolve in a natural environment. And so what this leads to is something that they refer to as a mismatch diseases of type 2 diabetes, obesity. These were things that didn't exist through most of history, simply because the environment, we adapted and evolved in a food scarce environment. So we've adapted in that environment, but now we're in a completely different environment. So why do we have such cravings for sugar, for flour, for processed foods, right? Why is it? Why aren't we optimized to be healthy, right? Why don't we naturally balance our food intake and feel, indifference for these foods or a disgust for these foods when we're overweight and sick, right? Because we could have type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, knowing that our lifestyle and our eating is part of that. Why do we have that, right? And or understand that, again, we got to go back into evolution, and we got to look at food scarce environments. So in a food scarce environment, what happens is certain qualities are selected for. And so one of them is people that could eat a lot, right? When there was food around, they are the ones that end up surviving. And so those genes get passed on. And so again, you have to understand that it was a food scarce environment. And so when you were in front of food, the people that could eat the most when there was food there were the ones that tended to survive. And so what ends up happening now, what we know is, when you see a lot of calories, you want to eat it. Why do you want to eat it though? That's the interesting part. And that's where you want to understand evolution. You want to eat it because, again, your ancestors, my ancestors, all of us that are here pretty much at this point had ancestors that could eat a lot when there was food around. And so now we inherit those genes. And when we get in front of a food that has a lot of calories in it and we start eating those, our brain starts releasing dopamine that basically feels really good. And it makes us want to do more of it, right? So you felt this, we've all felt it. And so in this environment, that seems like an unhealthy thing, but in a natural environment, it's a great thing, right? It's the thing that's going to keep you alive. And so again, it becomes this mismatch that, something that for millions of years was helpful, eating everything we could possibly eat, now in this environment becomes deadly. You see? And so let's break it down a little bit more just to kind of bring this in, to bring perspective into this. Why unhealthy cravings? Why don't we crave healthy food, right? As much as we crave the unhealthy stuff, right? That's the big question. And again, you have to understand that in a natural environment, there was no processed unhealthy foods, right? There was calories, there was nutrients, And so all of a sudden, when we get the opportunity to eat a lot of calories, our brain doesn't realize that we're in this new environment. It just says, great, calories, eat them up. And what I mean by that is they've done studies on mice where they'll put a tube into the stomach, so they're not even tasting it. And when they put high calorie foods in there, they release more dopamine. When they put low calorie foods in, they release less dopamine. So again, this is why, right? Why do we have that feeling? Why does a cookie taste so good and a carrot tastes like what tastes, right? It's easy to eat a box of cookies. It's hard to eat a box of carrots, right? And so a big part of that is literally when you eat the cookie, your brain releases lots of dopamine, and and that's what keeps that craving going and you wanting it, right? Because your body's still in the evolutionary times, food scarce environment, hasn't caught up. And so on top of that, what they've done is if you start to look at processed foods, you start to realize this concept, evolved body, modern society, we're always in this, and this is what's triggering us to overeat certain foods. So when you look at processed foods, what are they optimizing for? They're optimizing, they put lots of calories in, because when there's a lot of calories in the food, we like it more. Just that there's calories, it has nothing to do with flavor. The next thing is when the foods are easy to absorb and digest and to chew, right? Well, our body loves foods that are easy to chew, because again, in a natural environment, a lot of foods were extremely fibrous and they were hard to chew. You're really chewing, the whole time to get all the calories out of it. So now when we can get foods that they always say, like, food engineering wise, the modern marvel they have that they always reference is the Cheeto, because you put that in your mouth and it starts dissolving before you even chew it. You see? So it's been so processed that these foods just practically melt in your mouth, which again, our brain loves, because it's a super stimuli. Okay. Understand that. And so a lot of the foods we're eating now, we could say they're hyper palatable. What's hyper palatable? It's always referencing how quickly we can get calories into our body and how easily we can get those calories into our body. So it's always a function of that. How many calories are in the food and how easily can we get those calories into our body? So we like foods that are processed, that we don't have to chew a lot, right? Our brain likes, I should say, right? And so this starts, again, these are kind of the top of the mountain here, but you can start to go down and understand why do you crave sugar? Why do you overeat sugar and not overeat fruits and vegetables, right? Because sugar, again, implies calories. Sugar and sweetness was a relatively rare thing in the natural world, right? You would get it with honey, was the sweetest thing that existed, followed by fruits, which were way less sweet than they are now. Now, of course, everything's relative, so they were still sweeter than vegetables and other things you would eat. But so our brain links up sweetness with calories, and so the more we eat of that, the better. You see, flour. Okay, so flour. What we've done is we've taken flour and we've stripped it of a lot of the fiber and the other nutrients that it has, and we get right down to the core of it, and so it's easily absorbed. And so what happens is sugar and flour specifically is that they cause a spike of glucose, right? So it's almost like addictive, because it's instant. It's absorbed so fast, and our body likes that. Okay. And that's why we do it. We want to eat more of it. And then when we're done with it, we want more of it. It's very addictive substances, because again, they're absorbed very quickly. And it goes back to these evolved reasons why we want it. So as you understand this, I tell you, I share this with you so that you realize you're not weird for really liking flour-based products, sugar-based products, processed foods, junk food. It's not weird. Okay. There's an evolutionary reason for it that makes a lot of sense in a natural environment. But now in the modern world, we have to update it. And this is the beauty of understanding biological versus cultural evolution. The beauty of cultural evolution is it proves to us that we as humans have this prefrontal cortex where to some degree we can create our own reality. And so it's up to you to update your programming to account for the new reality you live in. Because if you don't, you're still running those old biological programs. And when you're running those old biological programs in this modern environment, it's going to make it very, very difficult for you to manage your weight and to manage your cravings. Okay. So you have to upgrade this and realize now you have to start to intentionally move yourself towards more natural foods. I hate to say more blander foods, but when you eat more blander foods, it gives you more control. Feel one. And when you take this approach, I think you're going to enjoy it and you're going to get better results than you've ever gotten in your life. So I hope this helps you.